Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Today we pause to honor the American stars we have lost recently, along with other cherished figures whose lives left a lasting mark on hearts around the world. If these tributes resonate with you, please take a moment to leave a like. It helps us keep bringing these stories to you with the dignity and care they deserve. Thank you for joining us today. Let us take a moment to remember them. Alexander Alex Duong left this world at only 42, a stand-up comic, a working actor, someone whose face clicked immediately for some people, and whose voice brought instant recognition for others. Those closest to him confirmed the news following a painful period of illness. 42 feels wrong. That is the thought that lands first and refuses to move. If you were a regular viewer of Blue Bloods, Sonny Lee probably stayed with you. Not the most dominant presence in any scene, but one of the most memorable. There was a precision to how Duong inhabited that character. Deliberate, grounded, as if he understood instinctively that real presence never needs to announce itself. Long before television came the stage, the Laugh Factory. Nights that started with sparse crowds and sometimes grew into something electric. Every comedian learns that rhythm eventually. The pause, the release, the moment something genuine breaks through the surface. Duong earned all of it the hard way. No favors, no fast track, just commitment repeated night after night. He was born in Dallas in 1984. Part of a generation that had to carve space in rooms that were not always welcoming. And yet he found his footing. That is not a small thing, even when people treat it like one. People who knew him described someone sharp and attentive, quick with a thought but never reckless with it, a genuine listener. And now that voice is simply gone. It is a strange thing to sit with. A man in motion, growing, sharpening his craft, and then suddenly all that remains are the moments we almost forgot to hold on to. We are holding them now. Joey Browner passed away at 65. And if you followed professional football in the 1980s, that name hits different. The announcement came without fanfare, the way it usually does with these things. No ceremony, just a statement that stops you mid-stride, especially if Sunday afternoons in that era meant something to you. Football was a different animal back then, less polished, more physical, and Browner was perfectly suited to it. Selected by the Minnesota Vikings in the 1983 draft, he wasted no time making himself impossible to ignore. Punishing hits, instinctive reads, a safety who was not simply responding to plays but forecasting them. Those Vikings defenses had a reputation, and Browner was a cornerstone of it. Year after year, through the back half of the decade, Pro Bowl selections followed, and with them, a respect that was not handed to him, but extracted through performance. Before the pros, there was USC, where football was not recreation, it was preparation. He brought that mindset into every professional season. Those who shared a locker room with him spoke about his discipline, how nothing was wasted, how he never needed the drama. He finished his career with a stint in Tampa Bay. The league was already evolving by then. But certain players belong permanently to a specific chapter of the game. Joey Browner is one of them. What endures is not just the statistics, but the feeling of watching someone play with that kind of focused intensity on a Sunday afternoon when the game still had grit in it. Jon Dee Graham has passed at the age of 67. If Austin's music scene was ever part of your world, that name does not just register, it reverberates. Those who were close to him shared the news, and it landed with a weight that had nothing to do with headlines. It was personal, the way losses in music communities tend to be. Graham was never someone who courted the spotlight in conventional ways, and that is precisely why the people who found his music never let go of it. Austin in the 1980s and 90s had a particular identity. Unpolished, emotionally direct, a little weathered. Graham did not perform that sound. He was that sound. On stage or in a cramped venue where the audience could practically feel the strings vibrate, he played with the kind of conviction that cannot be manufactured. In 2006, being named Musician of the Year at South by Southwest was not a revelation to anyone who had been paying attention in that city. It was confirmation of what they had already known for years. But his story extended beyond the music itself. People who encountered him spoke about a man who had walked through difficult seasons and emerged not hardened, but honest. That honesty went directly into the songs. No chasing trends, no calculating moves toward commercial success. Just the slow and deliberate construction of something genuine, something that outlasts the noise. That voice belongs to Austin now in a different way, present in the silence it left behind. Carlos Ray Chuck Norris has passed at 86, and even reading those words takes a moment to absorb. For decades, the running joke was that nothing could reach him, that he existed outside the normal rules. But here we are. The news was shared with the kind of quiet dignity that suited a man whose entire reputation was built on substance rather than spectacle. For anyone who came of age in the 70s and 80s, Chuck Norris represented something specific. He was part of the moment when martial art stopped being exotic and became genuinely American. Walker Texas Ranger would come along in the 90s and cement his presence in living rooms across the country. But the foundation was already there. The tournament circuits, the screen fights, that particular stillness he carried. He never oversold anything. You believed him because he never seemed to be performing. The origin of it all traces back to his time in the United States Air Force in the late 1950s. Korea, discipline. A young man with no particular destiny written for him yet. But something was being built quietly. Away from cameras, he carried that same groundedness. Family was central. So was faith, which he discussed openly and without performance. Over time, he grew into something beyond an actor or a fighter. He became a kind of cultural shorthand for consistency and resolve. The kind that does not get manufactured. It gets lived. And now a generation that grew up believing certain figures were simply permanent has to reckon with the fact that they are not. Time has a way of rearranging priorities. By the time the 1990s settled in, Henley was no longer in pursuit of validation or relevance or the next peak. He had been through enough of that cycle to see it clearly, which made 1994 all the more meaningful. The Eagles came back together, not because youth had returned, or because old wounds had vanished. They hadn't. But something more durable had replaced the rawness. A shared understanding of what the years had cost and given. Hell Freezes Over was the document of that reunion, and it was not simply a nostalgia exercise. When Henley sang those songs again, there was a gravity in them that had not existed in the original recordings. Not better necessarily, but deeper. The audiences who filled those venues were older too. They had accumulated their own losses and revisions and second chances. The connection was not between a performer and fans. It was between people who had all been somewhere difficult and come back changed. His personal life had also found its footing. He married Sharon Summerall in 1995, building a life grounded in privacy and intention rather than visibility. Children, stability, deliberate distance from the machinery of celebrity. A man who had once been inescapable, choosing to exist on his own terms. And yet, his engagement with the world did not shrink. Environmental advocacy became a genuine commitment. the Walden Woods Project, which he co-founded in the early 1990s to preserve the landscape that shaped Henry David Thoreau, was not a branding exercise. It was an extension of values he had been developing since long before anyone was watching. His later music reflects all of this. The urgency softened. The need to prove something dissolved. What remained was clarity and intention. Even now, Henley is not someone who gives the impression of a figure preserved in amber. He seems like someone who continued to evolve quietly and arrived at a version of himself that requires no justification. He still performs. Audiences still come. But the transaction has changed. It is no longer about spectacle or dominance. It is about recognition. Between an artist and the people who have carried his music through the chapters of their own lives. That boy from Linden, who was told to keep his dreams sensible, never actually disappeared. He is still present in every deliberate pause, in every note held a moment longer than expected, in every lyric that manages to say something true without announcing that it is doing so. Fame did not consume him. He walked through it and remained. Not unchanged, not untouched, but intact. Still present, still creating, still in the process of becoming something that does not need a label to be understood.